What has become of the Nobel Peace Prize? It was awarded to Obama, of whom I'm personally very fond, before he'd actually done anything. It was awarded to Aung San Suu Kyi, who's been criticised for her proximity to military generals reportedly responsible for human rights violations against Rohingya Muslims. And next up, we're now hearing potentially the Queen, for her 6 decades of dedication towards keeping the Commonwealth alive. Don't get me wrong, my problem is not with the claim that the Queen is dedicated to the Commonwealth. She's been a tireless advocate in securing its future. My problem is with the Commonwealth, or as I prefer to call it, the Empire 2.0. The Commonwealth was born out of a desire and a need in Britain's case to keep its imperial relationships and influence alive. It has done so very successfully. That is not, in my opinion, something to celebrate.
So, Afua, I mean, when I first saw this topic, I honestly didn't know what to say. I was asked to respond to you,
Unusual.
and yes, it is rather unusual, because there's a few things that confuse me. I mean, aside from my view on for me, my indifference to the Commonwealth after Empire, my indifference to the Nobel Peace Prize after Obama, as you rightly said, and my indifference to the Queen after the invention of democracy. I think indifference sums up my entire stance to this, but what I find really strange is that you happen to get exercised by the strangest of topics. Like, what I don't understand is, on a previous pledge show, we had a conversation about, for example, Churchill, and you refused to celebrate him. And now we're having a conversation about the Commonwealth, and you're, understandably somewhat sceptical about its purposes. And yet, outside of this show, you did write a column wanting to celebrate Winnie Madikizela Mandela. And I'm just wondering, what is it? Like, it seems to me to be the case that anything associated with the British establishment you reject, but anything associated with people like Winnie, who, had some really nasty stuff attributed to her, including burning people alive with necklaces, which she called the fire-burning petrol necklaces, were tires she'd put round people she arbitrarily accused of being treacherous and burnt them to death. And so, for me, I don't like that, and I don't like the Nobel Peace Prize.
Okay, let me break it down for you.
Their thing to Obama.
Let me break it down for you,
but I don't understand.
I'm going to help you. I'm going to explain this to you. What I'm interested in is correcting imbalance. I do not hate Britain. I actually love this country. This is my home. I wouldn't talk about these things if I didn't care, if I wasn't invested in the mistakes I think we're making here. So that's why I talk about Britain, not because I hate it or because I love attacking British heroes or I love attacking British...
You care about
no, because I actually want them to improve.
Presumably you care about South Africa as well.
I care... No, and the thing about Winnie Mandela, it wasn't me saying that she was flawless. I don't like the celebration of individuals as flawless. That's part of my problem with British heroes. I was saying that the press were reporting her as a mugger. The mugger of a nation. So many people in South Africa and across the world see her as the mother of the nation, a person without whose dedication and sacrifice apartheid wouldn't come down. And this is a bit of a distraction. So let me just give you my problem with the Commonwealth, right? The reality is, at the moment, right, companies listed on the London Stock Exchange control $1 trillion of resources in Africa. British companies own 1 million square kilometres of land in Africa, 4 times the landmass of Britain. This is the legacy of empire. Africa is getting poorer while British companies and British institutions continue to be enriched.
Well,
the Commonwealth is a huge distraction from the fact that imperial relationships are alive and well. So while we're celebrating it as this fluffy thing based on shared values, it is quite clearly something legitimising the continuation of an imperial legacy that is very destructive.
So, 2 points. You say you're not insulting the Queen. You are when you insult the Commonwealth. Yes, you are, because she has worked tirelessly over the past 60 years to preserve. But you've got,
those are practically my words,
existed
Carol.
Before she became head
Those are practically my words.
But anyway, let's go on.
I use the phrase tireless advocate.
OK, well, can somebody else talk in your debate? You mentioned the Commonwealth. It is a colossus. It is an economic powerhouse these days. It has a GDP of 10.45 trillion. It has a diversity of markets that the rest of the world can only dream about. It has an economic and cultural diversity which carries with it a huge strength, which is something I thought you would celebrate. But more importantly, you talk about what it does. It led the charge against apartheid. And to the point where when Mandela got elected as president of a free free South Africa, the first thing he did was rejoin the Commonwealth. It stopped civil war in Rhodesia, which then became Zimbabwe. Why are you flicking your eyes?
This is my problem with the version of history that's popular in this country.
But you always disagree with every version of British history.
In South Africa and Zimbabwe, Carol. You can't celebrate having helped end something without acknowledging the role you played in it. Right through the 70s and 80s, Britain was
never mind what it was. Look at what it is now, Afua.
Britain, at the centre of the Commonwealth,
what it was is not what it is now. I've just described what it is now. So you can't,
totally nonsensical.
You can't change history.
It's nonsensical.
You can't change what happened.
I've just given you an account of history.
I wonder if I can just interject. And
Yes.
to use modern parlance, shall we see what it says on the tin?
Yes.
So this is what the Commonwealth, and Afua, as I've got to know you and like you down the weeks and months we've worked together, apart from your insistence on levelling Nelson's column, but we'll park that. Let's just, because as I read through this list, I want you to tell me anything you could be against, Afua. The Commonwealth Secretariat supports member countries to achieve development, democracy and peace. We are a voice for small and vulnerable states and a champion for young people. We help to strengthen governance, build inclusive institutions and promote justice and human rights. The source is the Commonwealth. Afua, you can't argue with any of the above.
Sounds great. It sounds wonderful.
So have I converted you?
I've just given you the alternative reality, which is where resources are flowing within the Commonwealth. In the Commonwealth Games happening at the moment, seven Cameroonian athletes just went missing. Why do you think that was? Do you think it's because of the wonderful shared values in the Commonwealth? No, it's because of poverty in Cameroon. The reality is the African and some of the Asian members of the Commonwealth are still characterised by the same levels of poverty they have in the last...
Poverty in Greece, in Italy, in Portugal.
They're not in the Commonwealth.
It doesn't matter, but they're closer to home. You're talking about countries that are suffering.
I'm talking about a relationship between Britain and its former empire.
I'm not sure. I'm a bit like you, Majid. I really don't care if the Queen gets the Nobel Peace Prize, and I don't think she does. So the basic premise of the whole discussion, I think that doesn't matter. I don't care about. Sorry about that. But do I care about the Commonwealth? Yeah, I think the Commonwealth's quite a good institution. I think anything that brings a lot of countries together to discuss and talk, it comes. You're right, out of empire.
I think anything that brings Carol Malone and Greg Dyke together is pretty
impressive.
I know.
I'm quite shocked. I might have to change my position now. But but I don't see the Commonwealth as it is today. Forget about from whence it came. For what it is today, as an organisation that is damaging to society. If anything, I think it's to the advantage.
Can we remember,
shaken off those
but can we at least remember this? It is a voluntary association.
Yeah, it's voluntary.
And therefore, those countries that have joined it join voluntarily and do get some benefits from joining the club.
Voluntary
and so,
in a context in which that these countries were brought into the globalised economy, right, by Britain as the imperial power. They can't go it alone. And yes, they do choose to be part of the Commonwealth, but what is the history behind that? And I'm,
I'm not
Queen
can do nothing about that. We're talking about the Queen getting the Nobel Peace Prize. We can do nothing about what.
So my issue with that is that it's in Britain's interest to be in the Commonwealth. Like, we don't get prizes for enjoying being part of an institution that benefits us and continues our imperial legacy.
Not only have they voluntarily joined, they voluntarily appointed the Queen as their symbolic hand.
Yes.
And two countries joined without having been in the empire, Rwanda and Mozambique, because they saw the benefits of joining. Yes, there are difficulties with it, but if those countries are joining voluntarily because they see certain economic and human rights and political benefits, then surely what the solution should be is that we acknowledge the history, I agree, but work to strengthen that cooperation, because actually, a bit like Brexit, and, you know, I think, the more cooperation between countries there is, the better. That's my point.
Carol, long to reign over us, but I'm afraid no more time for the debate.